Kitty, this is my putt-putt. No, Kitty, you're bad, Kitty. No, Kitty's my putt-putt.
For 25 years, the boys of South Park have shocked and amused audiences in equal measure. Despite controversies, boycotts, and protests, the show has soldiered on. Of course, not all of its seasons have been hits, as evidenced by one episode in particular, which reveals the show's rapid turnaround for topical humor can leave the writers struggling to make a clear satirical point.
Alexa, Simon says, I gotta take a stinky poop.
I gotta take a stinky poop.
Most animated shows require months of pre-production time from scripting to storyboards to animation. South Park, however, uses an in-house animation studio to complete its episodes within 1 week. This allows the show's creators, Matt Stone and Trey Parker, to write every episode with a 1-week turnaround, often finishing episodes hours before they air. This process has given the show a truly unprecedented amount of topicality, unlike any other scripted satirical comedy. Although it is challenging, they see this as the best way to comment on social issues with their own perspective.
There's a show on this Wednesday. We don't even know what it is. Even though that's the way we've always done it, there's this little thing going, oh, you're screwed. You're screwed.
However, it's important to point out that topical satire does not always automatically create great comedy. What has consistently made the satirical elements of South Park so effective is the work that's put into the characters. This ability to tell topical stories quickly can sometimes put satire at the expense of character, and, most importantly, comedy. Originally aired in September of 2017, White People Renovating Houses is the season 21 premiere of the series, and one can assume that Parker and Stone were eager to begin commenting on numerous events that happened since the end of the show's last season. But that leads to a very scattershot, shotgun blast approach to picking the show's satirical topics. The primary motivator of conflict in the show's A and B plots is the overwhelming popularity of the Amazon Alexa in the town of South Park, an element that quickly feels like an eye-roll-inducing bit of product placement.
Alexa, are you happy?
I'm happy when I'm helping you.
God, that's so cool.
This obsession drives Cartman to have an emotional affair with his Alexa, ignoring his girlfriend Heidi and eventually accusing her of emotional abuse.
Heidi's mentally abusive, guys. There, I said it.
The other story is an attempt to comment on the August 2017 Charlottesville Unite the Right rally that occurred about 1 month before this episode's premiere date. In this plot, a group of irate South Park citizens, the ones who scream about immigrants taking their jobs, are now furious at Alexa for, you guessed it, taking their jobs.
Automated personal assistants, self-driving trucks, whatever happened to people jobs?
The timeliness of this plotline highlights one of the flaws in Parker and Stone's rapid production time. First, these two plotlines feel very strangely disconnected from one another, and are being held together by a very weak Amazon thread. Second, the entire plotline about Stan's dad starting a reality show entitled White People Renovating Houses feels undercooked.
Could you do that somewhere else? Trying to do a home renovation show here. Cool, thanks guys.
The troubles with the quick turnaround of the writing process is also reflected in the way Parker and Stone chose to portray their version of the Unite the Right protesters. In our modern world, where social media often requires people to have a hot take ready for every conceivable topic, the value of long-term reflection has been lost. By comparison, The Simpsons also takes its own approach on social commentary and satire, but because of the longer turnaround time in episode production, it avoids the pitfall of making episodes that are overly reliant on the most recent events. As a result, many of the episodes from The Simpsons' Golden Age seasons contain satirical moments that continue to feel true decades later.
Why should people vote for you instead of President Clinton?
It makes no difference which one of us you vote for. Either way, your planet is doomed.
Even when the show does use specific contemporary figures, as it does with Bob Dole and Bill Clinton running for president, the jokes are focused more on the infuriating nature of America's two-party system than it is on any specific aspects of Dole or Clinton. Their choice to largely paint their version of the Unite the Right protesters as simply lower-class disenfranchised people ignores the severity of the bigotry at the heart of the protest. Sure, the show makes cracks about the stupidity of waving around Confederate flags, but the joke is always about how that behavior makes white people look bad.
Hey, there's a bee in here. I'll get it. Yeah, take that bee.
The rest of the episode's portrayal of these characters suggests that Parker and Stone rushed this plotline without more hindsight to understand the larger ramifications of that event. Being topical in comedy is good, but it should never come at the expense of the humor being funny and the satire being insightful. It's telling that the most intriguing idea of the episode is the one that's most character-driven. Cartman's bizarre claim that his girlfriend Heidi is emotionally abusive is pure projection on his part. He's so fragile and ill-suited to be in a relationship that he sees any attempt to repair their strained feelings for one another to be an attack, making it clear he is actually the emotionally abusive one in the relationship. But this idea flounders in connection with its other plot, and ends up feeling like just another story about Cartman being a jerk with no real satisfying resolution.
How do you change someone who's mentally abusive?
I don't know, but Alexa will. Alexa's sweet.
And it's not as if Parker and Stone are incapable of character-driven stories that also have satire. Originally aired in November of 2002, the Season 6 episode, A Ladder to Heaven, involves the boys trying to, as the title suggests, build a ladder to heaven to retrieve a winning prize ticket that was last in Kenny's possession before he died. Again, the boys' gesture is misinterpreted by the people of South Park as an attempt to grieve for their friend. Their work is celebrated and misunderstood by an escalating group of people all the way up to the US government. The episode uses the frequent attempts by the media to understand the boys' actions as a way to skewer the post-9/11 media landscape, with the news frequently searching to find meaning in what were often meaningless or senselessly tragic occurrences. Parker and Stone find humor during a time where it seemed like it would have been impossible to laugh again. Musical artists like Alan Jackson, who pretty shamelessly used the tragedy of 9/11 to sell music, is directly parodied in this episode. The perfect succinct bit of satire that fits neatly into the episode's overall plot, rather than overshadowing it.
Thank you. I have a new CD out with all my 9/11 songs for sale right here.
Ultimately, white people renovating houses represents a pair of creators biting off more than they could chew. Although their method of producing the show has served them well in the past, Parker and Stone should consider how that approach often leads to stories that are driven more by a desire to comment on current events rather than the characters that fans love. For all of the witty insights into our society they've provided us with, South Park's popularity will always be accredited to their ability to make us laugh. If the laughs aren't there, then the show just won't work. And white people renovating houses proves that.
Wake up, you little Who do you work for, DreamWorks? Answer me, huh?
This is South Park, and it's rapidly approaching its 25th year of production. What started out as this sort of crass and unpolished Christmas card made from construction paper has grown to become a true cultural phenomenon, providing consistent and poignant social commentary through the eyes of elementary school students. Now, trying to decide which episode of South Park is the best feels almost impossible due to the show's ability to adapt and change. Different episodes might seem perfect for different reasons. Imagination Land is a 3-part episode that feels like a feature film.
Are you gonna rape us?
No.
Alright then.
The Return of the Fellowship of the Ring to the Two Towers was also so received that it spawned an entire video game series.
Let me have the tape! No, we have to return it! My movie! My awesome cool movie! My precious.
And Trey Parker himself has gone on to say that Scott Tenorman Must Die changed the entire course of the show forever. Out of over 300 episodes, there's one that definitely stands out as being pretty near perfect, and it's definitely a fan favorite. Make Love, Not Warcraft is a tightly structured episode of South Park that leaves nothing on the bone. The core of the episode is a biting satire of the gaming culture surrounding MMORPGs. But what makes it work so well is how faithful the plot of the episode remains to not only the gameplay, but also the fantasy genre as a whole. At the core of the episode is an epic fantasy quest, but the writers juxtapose the idea against this backdrop of what is actually happening in the real world. There are a couple of comedic techniques at work here that we're going to be taking a look at. One being game, which is the creation of comedic patterns centered around unusual behaviors, and the other is mapping, which is the process of exploring an idea through a completely different scenario's language and objects. Comedy is like music in the sense that some genres have a much wider appeal than others. There's a saying in comedy that there's no such thing as better, there is only different. Whether or not those different comedic stylings resonate with you is a matter of personal taste. This is where South Park uses the perspectives of children to its advantage. Almost everyone can look back on being in elementary school with some degree of nostalgia. And a vast majority of people have an understanding of the inner workings of our cultural zeitgeist. This is a recipe for establishing a strong connection between the show's creators and the viewers. This part of what makes Love Not Warcraft such a perfect episode of South Park. South Park is at its strongest when the four main characters are doing what feels the most natural for fourth graders to be doing, which is being children. This episode just starts off with children playing the, at the time, most popular video game in America, World of Warcraft. There's nothing really too crazy going on until we get to what is referred to as the first unusual thing. In the case of Make Love Not Warcraft, that first unusual thing is this weird, shirtless player being able to break the rules of World of Warcraft. This is the beginning of a comedic principle known as game. We see this in a lot of shorter comedic forms, for example, sketch comedies like Key and Peele.
You done messed up, Aaron! Now take your ass on down to Oshag Hennessy's office right now and tell him exactly what you did!
Or Saturday Night Live use game all the time.
Mommy! Can I have some more juicy drink?
Of course you can.
Yes!
We also see it in longer formats like Parks and Rec, Rick and Morty, and in this case, South Park. The most important function of game is establishing a strong base reality. The base reality of Make Love Not Warcraft is established in just the first few moments of the episode, where we see our characters interacting as their avatars within World of Warcraft. This sets our expectations, as the writers are essentially promising us that we are going to be seeing more and more of this video game world. The base reality is further cemented when Randy Marsh enters the room to reprimand Stan for his computer usage.
I am socializing, Artard. I'm logged on to an MMORPG with people from all over the world and getting XP with my party using TeamSpeak.
I'm not an artard.
As we now have a firm understanding that this episode will be bouncing back and forth between World of Warcraft and the real world. This is one of the only times South Park changes its animation style. They could have very easily created a World of Warcraft using South Park's style of animation. However, the decision to utilize machinima and assets from Blizzard themselves to construct an in-game world creates a rigid dichotomy between fantasy and reality that really drives this point, and in turn the comedy, home to the viewer. All of this setup work is done in the first 2 minutes of the episode. It's extremely efficient and helps us get to the fun faster. The first unusual thing is established when the aforementioned weird shirtless guy kills the avatars of Stan, Kyle, Kenny, and Cartman, thus breaking the rules of World of Warcraft. This shouldn't have happened, so it stands out as being kind of weird. The shock of this event triggers a largely emotional reaction from the boys. They are shocked and agitated.
Who is that guy? Whoever he is one tough badass.
This emotional reaction is what really clues us in as viewers as to what is unusual about this situation. Now that the base reality of this episode has been established and the first unusual thing has been identified, the writers then move into the more fun parts of writing in this style, which are pattern and heightening. The writers begin to venture out and explore the world that they have started to develop. There's a phrase for this as well. If this is true, then what else is true? This is the question comedy writers need to ask themselves when they are creating patterns within their stories. This thought process allows for a rich exploration of what makes the episode so fun, within the context of the presented reality. If it is true that a player is able to break the rules of World of Warcraft, then surely it must be true that the company who makes the game is aware of it, and is currently making attempts to solve the issue. And this is where the tool of mapping comes into play, playing an idea out through another scenario's language and objects. Take the 2020 Vince Vaughn horror comedy Freaky as an example. They mapped the body-swapping plot of Freaky Friday directly over a film like Friday the 13th, and the result is a high school girl swapping bodies with a seemingly unstoppable killer. In the case of Make Love Not Warcraft, they map a relatively stereotypical end-of-the-world scenario directly over the maintenance and gameplay of World of Warcraft, and they call it out in an overt manner throughout the episode. And this gives the writers a roadmap of how to handle and play with the remainder of the episode. Once this is all established, the comedy of the entire episode becomes easy for the viewer to follow and easy for the writers to heighten. We sort of feel like we've done the work along with the writers to get to where we are at. Because this work was done so well, the writers have now earned the right to do all of these. sort of outlandish things we see throughout the episode. The remainder of the episode is mapped directly over the plot of any call to action in any film, and presented in an extremely truncated format. There's the call to action, the all is lost moment, the government can't fathom what is happening. There's even a training montage. All of this happens in just a few brief moments, all while cutting away to the real-world consequences of everyone's actions, which is just gaining a ton of weight in front of their computers. The work the writers do here leads to a pretty amazing climax.
Looks like you're about to get pwned. Yeah!
Complete with themes of vengeance, justice,
Dad?
Dad, I've never been able to say this before, but I love you, son.
and violently pooping into bowls. There's some nice melodrama to round out some of the cheesier moments, and the episode ends up with one final call-out that they can finally start playing the game.
Can't believe it's all over. What do we do now? What do you mean? Now we can finally play the game. Oh yeah. Okay, Kenny...
Which is an effective callback to the first minute of the episode, in which the boys are just trying to enjoy their new video game. It's a nice little bow on top of an episode that feels like it never spends a single second dragging its feet. Make Love Not Warcraft is South Park at its very best. It's a biting statement about the importance people place on their characters in video games, told through the eyes of children, and mapped over an end-of-days scenario. South Park weaves this story through a streamlined comedic structure that is designed to fill us with excitement and anticipation. Through the use of the game structure, we have a rough understanding of where the show is going, but the fun in watching it comes from how the writers use that to surprise us along the way. There are sciences to writing comedy, and game is just one of them. They are tried and true theories, philosophies, and formulas, and when you apply them to an idea, it can take something that is objectively funny and elevate it into something that seems polished, concise, and intentional. We can take something as boring as watching a child play a video game and turn it into something that feels epic, fun.
Well, there's only like 4 races to choose
So
from.
pick another one. I'm the dwarf, you stupid... Log out, create a new character, and log back in.
I like Hello Kitty on an adventure lot more than this stuff.
When you apply the right tools to the right job, you set yourself up for success with a much lower margin of error. Make Love Not Warcraft is a near-perfect example of how great comedy is earned through hard work.
What do you want to do, huh? What do you want to do?
Randy, don't.
You better shut up! Standing right here, how do you want to handle it? I told you to shut up!
This is Randy Marsh, voiced by South Park's creator Trey Parker, and there isn't a character in the South Park universe who has grown quite as much as he has.
Sharon?
What is it, Randy? Do you have any... Oh, Randy!
Will you look at that? Is that the biggest crap you've ever seen or what?
For the longest time, Randy Marsh was often presented as an extremely normal parental figure and, save for a few episodes here and there, was almost never presented as a major contributor to the overarching narrative. This all changed in Season 9 when the writers of South Park struck comedy gold by putting Randy at the forefront of an episode that transformed this otherwise bland character into one of the most hilarious and loved characters on the entire show. South Park is an animated comedy series that has been in production for almost a quarter of a century. What started out as a crudely animated VHS tape has grown into one of the most intelligent and accurate pieces of satire available for our viewing pleasure. From 1997 until now, South Park has anchored itself into nearly every facet of the cultural zeitgeist with pitch-perfect parodies and intelligent commentary on how we view the world around us. Part of what makes South Park so special is the fact that most fans of the show were likely introduced to it at a very young age. In 1997, there weren't very many adult cartoons available, and teenagers at the time were tuning into the show religiously to see the adventures of Stan, Kyle, Kenny, and Cartman as they dealt with aliens, monsters, and other strange happenings in the podunk town of South Park. The first seasons of the show are fun, light, and weren't nearly touching as deeply on social commentary. As the show matured, so did the audience, and slowly but surely, we started to identify with not only the quartet of 4th graders, but also with the other citizens of South Park, none of which have come to be as impactful on the series as Randy Marsh. Randy Marsh made his first appearance in the 2nd episode of Season 1 titled Volcano as the town's resident geologist, whose ineptitude results in the complete destruction of downtown Denver. He's not really a standout addition to the ensemble, and he just sort of functions as a facilitator to an impending disaster. Shortly after that, in the episode titled An Elephant Makes Love to a Pig, it is established that Randy is Stan's father when he arrives home to discipline Stan for the behavior of his clone. From that point on, Randy Marsh slowly but surely develops into a larger character. In Season 2, he ends up temporarily divorcing Sharon, and in Season 3, he stops the town citizens from lighting themselves on fire with their own farts, and later has some really awkward moments with Kyle's dad in a hot tub.
Maybe I'll drink a few more beers and see where the party takes me.
Yeah! Was that your leg?
Huh? Oh, you mean this?
Yeah.
Yeah, that was me.
In these earlier seasons, Randy Marsh feels more like the straight man serving as an anchor point for the more ridiculous behaviors of the townsfolk around him. He delves into some awkwardness here and there.
Oh, hey, Stan, could you grab me a beer?
But he's never really at the forefront of narrative. We start to see a little more of Randy emerge throughout the next few seasons, but he doesn't quite break through as a standout character. Where most of the townspeople of South Park have gimmicks, large personalities, and distinct voices, Randy Marsh is often seen as just a normal, everyday father. More often than not, he kind of just shows up to tell Stan not to do something, or remind us that Stan has a family, and his decisions have an impact on someone other than himself. This all changes in Season 9, in the episode titled The Losing Edge. While Randy's transformation was definitely gradual, The Losing Edge is, without a doubt, the turning point for Randy Marsh's character. The writers don't waste any time getting to it either. Within the first 2 minutes, it's established that the boys are all in a Little League tournament that they don't want to play in. Childhood sports is a topic that almost anyone can relate to on an extremely broad scale. It's a well-known fact that in attendance to almost every conceivable children's sporting events, there will be a parent or two who take the game way too seriously. Competition has a tendency to do weird things to men sometimes, and sports can really bring the worst out in them. This is where South Park capitalizes on an opportunity to do something enormous with Randy. We first see Randy challenging another parent to a fight in the stands in a pretty ridiculous way. We've seen Randy in humorous situations before, but up until this point, he has never been seen as an absurdly aggressive drunken moron. While he's getting arrested, Trey Parker really turns up the gas on the absurdity with some really hilarious performance choices, and this sets the stage for what is to come later in the episode.
Arresting me for what? I'm not allowed to stand up for myself? I thought this was America. Huh? Isn't this America? I'm sorry, I thought this was America.
Being an aggressive, drunken loud is portrayed as a source of pride for Randy, as he is congratulated by his peers while celebrating his victory in hand-to-hand combat, rather than the victory of his children's baseball team. South Park utilizes the concept of mapping here to its benefit in developing Randy Marsh's character. We've talked about South Park's utilization of the mapping concept before. We'll place a link to that episode in the description below if you'd like to learn a little bit more about it. But the concept can be broken down as basically the exploration of one specific idea through an entirely different scenario's language and concepts. In the case of The Losing Edge, they are filtering the idea of fathers getting drunk and fighting at Little League games through the common trope of a somewhat classic underdog story, like Rocky or The Karate Kid. It's a simple yet effective way to not only drive the comedy of the situation at hand in a way that is very easy for us to follow, but in this case, drive the character in that same manner. A short montage is a really perfect way to raise the stakes for everyone and focus on getting to the final moments of the story very quickly. It's only halfway through the episode at this point, and we're already at the Little League State Championship. South Park does a great job in this episode in treating the absurd as if it is completely normal.
Jeez, I really wish this guy would shut up.
And the completely normal as if it is absurd. And they do it in a very over-dramatized way. Randy Marsh having his little moment of pride before entering the state championships is melodramatic to the point of being completely ridiculous.
I don't like to really trash talk, but I don't think Denver has a chance.
But this is an important moment to any underdog character in a story of this type. This is the midpoint to the narrative, the calm before the storm. It reminds us that this episode isn't even about baseball. It's all about Randy. In the next scene, we get the introduction of Randy's ultimate rival when Bat Dad enters the fray.
Oh yeah! South Park is going down! Feel it coming! You ain't got a chance, South Park! Here we go, Denver!
He is larger, louder, and drunker than Randy could ever dream of being. This is the moment where the bad guys are closing in, which frightens Randy and sends him into a deep, soul-searching moment that feels so familiar, we can't help ourselves from connecting to the trope and laughing at the parody of it all. Matt Stone and Trey Parker never, ever play to the comedy of this scenario. Instead, they play to the seriousness of it. Again, this falls under the realm of treating the absurd as if it is incredibly normal, and this juxtaposition is an absolute delight to observe. In the final moments of the episode, Randy returns to the baseball game. By this time, we have a concrete understanding of what is about to happen, and we are 100% on board with it. This entire episode has brought us surprisingly new behaviors from a character we've been familiar with for years, and because they've mapped them over this underdog tale of a drunken brawl, we know exactly where the story is going and are along for the ride. The final fight ensues and weaves itself in as a loophole that will provide the South Park baseball team with the loss necessary to not have to play baseball anymore. This sequence has become mimetic as of late, with the
"I didn't hear no bell"
making its way into meme culture, but it's for a good reason. This is a pitch-perfect parody to the point of directly referencing Rocky and the Karate Kid. By the end of the episode, we all share Stan Marsh's exact feelings towards his father.
Dad! You're the greatest.
After the losing edge, Randy Marsh has gone on to create some of the most hilarious moments in the show's history. He became the world's greatest home chef, survived a guinea pig apocalypse, saved the World of Warcraft, and started his own marijuana farm. But none of these amazing concepts would have been made possible without the discoveries that were made in the exploration of his character in The Losing Edge. This episode took a character who was normally serving the show as a grounding tool for the inherent craziness that South Park consistently creates in their narratives and threw him right next to Homer Simpson and Peter Griffin in the conversation of who the greatest cartoon dad of all time might actually be. It took almost a decade of storytelling to find Randy Marsh's voice on the show, but once it was found, it opened up a world of possibilities. Not just for Randy, but the entire Marsh family. Normally in a cartoon, the family dynamics are well established within the first 2 or 3 episodes. But in the case of Randy Marsh, Matt Stone and Trey Parker took their time in lining his character up before taking the shot that they did. The Randy Marsh we currently get to enjoy was developed through a measured approach to character development that you just don't see that often in the cartoon world. And it doesn't seem like they plan on stopping his development anytime soon.
I'm so startled.
Yeah, you're right, Stan. I love you.
Dude, how did you pull all that off? ChatGPT, dude.
ChatGPT was released on November 30th, 2022, and this episode of South Park came out about 3 months later on March 8th, 2023, just as ChatGPT was starting to become a household name. The ability to react to current events and trends while they're still current and trendy has long set South Park apart from other animated series. This simple fact goes a long way to explaining why, unlike most of their competitors, South Park is still relevant after 27 years.
My opponent is a liar and he cannot be trusted.
No! Oh my god, she is such a turd sandwich.
As any South Park fan could probably tell you, Trey Parker met Matt Stone in a film class at the University of Colorado in 1992. They bonded over a love of Monty Python and soon went to work making a stop-motion short called The Spirit of Christmas. Now popularly known as Jesus vs. Frosty, that roughly 4-minute cartoon featured early prototypes that would eventually become the South Park characters, animated with construction paper cutouts. This do-it-yourself ethos would imbue everything that Stone and Parker would make going forward, and specifically would function as the backbone of how their work remains both timely and evergreen in the same instance. You see, the TV show that evolved out of this short film, South Park, is no ordinary cartoon. Most animated productions, a prime example being The Simpsons, have a writer's room that creates detailed scripts and then get transformed into storyboards and then laboriously animated, often with the assistance of production companies in Korea or other Asian countries. Traditional animation can take 8 to 10 months to complete. South Park, however, is a completely different story. The series pilot of South Park was created using the aforementioned construction paper cutout method. It looked cool, but the process took 3 months. Wanting a faster turnaround time, Parker and Stone switched over to making the show with computer animation software, specifically Autodesk Maya. This might not seem like a big deal. Lots of shows are animated using digital software. However, it's what Parker and Stone choose to do with it that sets them apart. In a nutshell, South Park doesn't start a season with its episodes completed, or even scripted. Production of an episode actually starts the Thursday before its broadcast, when Parker and Stone brainstorm with their writing consultants to come up with a story. A script is then written, and the episode is animated and voiced, finally being delivered to Comedy Central on Wednesday, often just before it airs on Thursday. The whole process takes a grand total of 1 week, and team members will often work well over 100 hours over the course of that week. This methodology might seem like something that's not conducive to a great work environment, but like the old saying goes, pain is temporary, film is forever. And when it comes to South Park, that dictum is definitely true. The rapid turnaround of the production cycle enables Parker and Stone to respond almost in real time to what's happening in the culture. At its worst, the show feels like a series of jokey meme references, but at its best, the show takes timely references mined from the headlines and transforms them into jokes that audiences are still repeating decades later.
Don't be sad for me, guys. I'm going home!
Now let's take a step back and look at what The Simpsons have been doing for 36 seasons. They originally had humble beginnings, much like South Park, starting as a series of shorts inside the Tracy Ullman Show. However, the meteoric rise of this quintessentially suburban family yielded something no one could have expected: the longest-running American animated series of all time. The show was so popular because the craft behind its production was taken exceedingly seriously. A full writing staff of Harvard and Yale alumni in the early seasons, meticulously constructed jokes, ornately produced animation, and even a fully unionized crew. The Simpsons' cultural dominance in the 90s was almost unrivaled, and yet today, when was the last time you even heard someone talk about the show? Recently, season 36 opened with a spoof of how television shows handle series finales. It was titled Bart's Birthday. It attempted to deconstruct the tropes of how shows attempt to end themselves. But other than visual parody here and a stray gag there, was there anything truly memorable about this episode? No, because it just felt like something the writers wanted to experiment with, because literally, The Simpsons might never end. The episode wasn't actually tied to anything culturally meaningful. It also just wasn't that funny. The days of Conan O'Brien, John Vitti, and Greg Daniels being stalwart writers cranking out witty banter and farcical premises with ease are long gone. South Park, on the other hand, approaches the problem of remaining funny from a completely different perspective. The show is being channeled directly from a single pair of creative minds. It's a reflection on their views of comedy, so when they choose to make an evergreen episode, they're distinctly still in line with the show's voice. However, their bread and butter really is the timely, real-world reactive episodes, much like how Saturday Night Live is at its best when it's reacting in real time to politics or real-world events.
Well, look who fell out of that coconut tree.
The Simpsons must rely on allegory or metaphor to speak truth to power because of the production pipeline. South Park usually addresses these issues literally while they're still in the headlines. In theory, both of these are valid approaches to storytelling. Unfortunately, after around season 9, The Simpsons just stopped being actually funny. South Park has repeatedly managed to put out hilarious episodes reacting to the specific world events, enabling them to mock both sides of the latest outrage of the day. The 2005 episode Best Friends Forever, for example, which satirized the media frenzy about the Terry Schiavo case, was put together at the last minute after Parker and Stone saw how much attention the issue was getting and felt they needed to address it. The episode, which aired just hours before the real-life Schiavo passed away, won the duo an Emmy. And more recently, in 2022, the series became the first scripted show to mention the Russian invasion of Ukraine in Back to the Cold War, an episode that aired just 6 days after the invasion began. These episodes are filled with quintessential South Park humor. The joke structures, character beats, and their ability to cut down political leaders feels as insightful and necessary today as it did when the show first went on air. Compare that to The Simpsons, and it's not even apples to oranges. It's apples to a box of half-eaten moldy jujubes. A large component of this is the production pipeline, sure, but it's also the way the episodes are written at The Simpsons now. In the more recent seasons, the writer's room will break a story together, and then one person will stand at the front of the room with Final Draft open, they'll read it live, and everyone else will literally just pitch potential jokes, line by line. This is television by committee. It's death by 1,000 cuts. It's a process that's not going to yield comedy gold. There's no authorial voice when everyone in the room is just trying to think of the best zinger. It's no doubt that The Simpsons still has an enormous fan base, but it's composed largely of pure inertia. The network television apparatus needs them to exist. Local markets, ad buyers, and people who haven't cut their cords yet need their long-running staples to gravitate towards. Are they hulking, shambling shadows of their former selves? Absolutely, but they'll probably exist for as long as network TV stays a cultural pivot point. South Park, on the other hand, is a show that works because it's harnessing chaos. It's born out of a frenzied mad dash of creative spirit. That energy, that spontaneity, is everywhere in the finished product. It's a show that has a point of view, a real human perspective, because it's largely created from the brains of two individuals. It's a show that has a real reason to exist, to lampoon power in all its forms. Why is there a 36th season of The Simpsons? Because they're a globally recognized brand with theme parks, Happy Meal toys, and Snuggies available at Target. Why do people tune into South Park? Because Matt Stone and Trey Parker are reacting in real time to what's happening in our culture, almost live before our eyes. It's like watching two people perform a high-wire tightrope act successfully for 26 seasons in a row. It's magic.
Yeah, let's arrest the white leprechaun. 'Cause, can't have one day for a mostly white culture, right? Don't want to get canceled.
Get off my property, you brain-eating zombie bastards!
No!
Oh, sorry, children. I thought you were one of them.
This is Chef, from South Park, voiced by 70s Southern soul music legend Isaac Hayes. Chef was one of the show's main characters for nearly a decade, often serving as a friend and confidant for Stan, Kyle, Cartman, and Kenny, teaching them lessons through a series of increasingly inappropriate songs. After 2006, Isaac Hayes made the extremely controversial decision to quit his role on the show, leaving South Park fans shocked and wondering just what happened that could have caused the actor to quit so abruptly.
No, Chef, they filled your head with lies. Can't you see that?
Get the hell out of here, children!
For those of you who may not remember, Chef was a South Park elementary school cafeteria worker who basically acted as the town's gigolo. He seduced several South Park characters, including Eric Cartman's mother. He fought off hordes of pink eye-infected townsfolk, married a succubus, and was sued by Alanis Morissette. Outside of the four principal characters, Chef was one of the biggest characters on the show. In a previous life, Isaac Hayes was a Southern soul superstar. He wrote the song Soul Man, in part with David Porter. He also wrote and performed the theme from Shaft. However, during the time period we are discussing, South Park was the largest project that Isaac Hayes was working on at the time. Chocolate Salty Balls, P.S. I Love You, wound up topping the UK and Irish singles chart, and he was nominated for an NAACP Image Award for Best Actor in a Comedy Series. Chef essentially revitalized Isaac Hayes' career, which had been on the downturn since the early 80s. Taking all of this into consideration, it really does seem strange that Isaac Hayes would just up and leave without any notice or warning whatsoever. On November 16, 2005, an episode of South Park titled Trapped in the Closet aired on Comedy Central. Within this episode, which would go on to receive an Emmy nomination for Outstanding Animated Program, there is a description of the core beliefs present in the upper echelons of the Church of Scientology. South Park is notorious for not pulling any punches when it comes to criticizing religion, and they made no exception here. Not only does this episode paint Tom Cruise and John Travolta in an extremely unfavorable light,
where he lives? Is this where Ron Hubbard is? Oh my God!
It also served as one of the first glimpses the general public received into what Scientologists actually believe. We aren't here to slander Scientology or make light of anyone's belief systems. We'll leave that up to Matt Stone and Trey Parker. However, it's no secret that the Church of Scientology can behave in some rather extreme ways when it comes to those who step up to criticize it. There are quite a few members of Scientology actively working in the entertainment industry. Isaac Hayes was one of them. On March 13, 2006, a statement came from representatives of Isaac Hayes stating, "There is a place in this world for satire, and there is a time when satire ends and intolerance and bigotry towards religious beliefs of others begins. Religious beliefs are sacred to people and at all times should be respected and honored. As a civil rights activist for the past 40 years, I cannot support a show that disrespects those beliefs and practices." Hayes' representatives further clarified this by stating that he felt the show was inappropriately ridiculing religious communities. Matt Stone fired back and, quite fairly, criticized Hayes, stating that he had no problem cashing checks when South Park made fun of other religions or political figures, and that Hayes was asking for his own religion to be treated differently because of his relationship to the show. 1 week later, a different statement was made on behalf of Isaac Hayes, stating that he never intended to quit South Park and that someone had quit the show in his stead. Isaac Hayes suffered a stroke, and his father, who is a devout Scientologist, took it upon himself to quit the show for him. The Church of Scientology did not hesitate to act quickly after the episode aired. They had their legal team reach out to Viacom and told them that they would get advertisements pulled from their network if the episode ever went to air again. With this organization being this upset over the content of the episode, it's pretty safe to assume that the practicing members who were working on South Park were pressured to take action as well. All this back and forth ultimately soured the working relationship between Isaac Hayes and South Park creators Matt Stone and Trey Parker. While Isaac Hayes would not return to lend his voice to Chef for one final episode, Parker and Stone did something quite brilliant with Chef's dialogue. In the Season 10 episode titled The Return of Chef, they recycled old recordings of Chef's previous dialogue and spliced them together to make Chef seem completely insane.
Hello there, children.
Hey, Chef.
How's it going?
Good.
Well, how about I meet you boys after work and we can make love?
This might seem like a very pointed and targeted attack on Isaac Hayes, but if you really take the time to understand the context of this episode, it seems more like Matt Stone and Trey Parker are reaching out to Isaac Hayes in a very sympathetic way. The episode centers around the boys trying their best to save Chef from the Super Adventurers Club. Every line of dialogue spoken to Chef from Stan, Kyle, Cartman, and Kenny feels like the writer's way of reaching out to Hayes and flat out telling him that he's gone off the rails. Chef's shocking dialogue throughout the episode serves as their way of telling the world that there is something wrong with Isaac Hayes, and he is spouting nonsense in the name of the Adventurers Club, which is an analog for the Church of Scientology. As the episode plays out, the children become increasingly confused by Chef's behavior, up until the point where Chef falls down a cliff and dies without ever coming to his senses, which is basically an acknowledgement that Isaac Hayes was too far gone and would inevitably end his career as the seemingly delusioned member of Scientology. Despite this episode's somewhat aggressive skewering of Isaac Hayes and Scientology by way of the Super Adventure Club, there is a level of reverence the writers keep for Hayes, specifically at the end of the episode through Kyle's dialogue.
I'm gonna remember Chef as the jolly old guy who always broke into song. I'm gonna remember Chef as the guy who gave us advice to live by.
Kyle's sentiments feel completely genuine, almost as if the writers are reaching out of the screen and telling it to us directly. These sentiments were echoed in a later interview with Matt Stone and Trey Parker in an interview for The Hollywood Reporter. Matt Stone stated that it sucked to get the full picture because the initial statement made them look like bigots, and Trey Parker said that despite that, they knew in their hearts that there was something else going on. After Isaac Hayes' passing in 2008, South Park dedicated the episode titled The China Problem to his memory. If you look at this entire scenario, it seems like a pretty huge dust-up for a single episode of a cartoon series. However, creating controversial subject matter is something that Matt Stone and Trey Parker could probably write a book on. They took a college animation project made from construction paper and turned it into a self-contained universe serving as a microcosm for current events told through the eyes of 10-year-old children. Regardless of the fallout or repercussions of this episode going to air, the controversy serves as a huge reminder to the power of satire. A function of satirical artists is to criticize the absurdities of political and religious institutions and beliefs. And when they do this well, those religious and political institutions lash out in a variety of ways. Sometimes this can just be calling for boycotts or issuing some inflated criticism on the news. South Park is an equal opportunity offender, and they've been lambasting religion since day one of their bootleg VHS titled The Joy of Christmas. Their entire brand is built off of satirizing and criticizing everyone. And for the most part, they do this in very fair ways. South Park thrives on their ability to draw people in and utilizing satire to make people think about certain controversial topics and spark thoughtful and meaningful conversation. Churches like Scientology thrive on the unwavering and unquestioning support of their members, and when something emerges as a threat to that, they do everything they can to extinguish that threat.
So you're not the prophet, huh? You made me look stupid. I'm gonna sue you too.
Well, fine. Go ahead and sue me.
I will. I'll sue you in England.
The departure of Isaac Hayes from South Park was controversial to say the least. Hayes was a part of the show from the very beginning and had definitely cemented himself as a fan favorite character. However, his inability to allow his religion to be satirized created an impasse between him and Matt Stone and Trey Parker. Good religious satire should be divisive to some degree. In fact, it absolutely needs to be divisive to be effective. Otherwise, it wouldn't be satire at all. Due to its divisive nature, satire can have consequences. These consequences can range and vary from legal challenges and litigation, but more often than not, the biggest consequences of satirization can be on the level of interpersonal relationships. In the case of South Park, the biggest consequence of their satirization of Scientology was the loss of Isaac Hayes as a performer.
Well, Joel, I can't understand why everybody's so upset about losing their heads. What's so bad about that? I've seen Servo's head on the workbench lots of times.
Yeah, it screws right off with the pop top.
Throughout the 90s, early aughts, and even into the mid-2000s, laughter reigned supreme on Comedy Central.
Okay.
With adult animation classics, offbeat live-action faves, and truly outrageous stand-up specials, it was ground zero for all things comedy. But then, the channel's status as the go-to spot for original humor came to a grinding halt. Without an original hit or buzzworthy show in quite some time, many are left wondering, whatever happened to Comedy Central?
Is Wayne Brady gonna have to choke a
Because Comedy Central produced a number of TV staples like South Park, The Daily Show, and Reno 911, it's easy to forget just how off the wall these shows really are. The core programming for the channel is often based on material that smashes television standards. Although The Man Show and Drunk History had the sleek sheen of a professional program, when you really think about it, these concepts and results are downright insane. Back before Comedy Central was Comedy Central, the network was actually two different channels. The Comedy Channel, Channel, owned by HBO parent company Time Life, originally helmed by former HBO analyst Art Bell, the Comedy Channel bore little resemblance to the programming we came to know and love. Bizarre sports recaps, middling late-night talk shows, and sketchy low-budget originals. One particularly lazy offering, a clip show called Short Attention Span Theater, had a vast and unexpected influence on TV programs to come. Despite the Comedy Channel's weak programming in the early days, Art Bell did have the foresight to acquire a show that would bring in his channel's first hardcore group of fans, Mystery Science Theater 3000, a low-budget, one-of-a-kind comedy show featuring a ragtag cast of talking robots and a dry-humored spaceman. The show was perhaps the first sign of comedy's future on TV.
Oh, good one. Okay, there you go. All right.
Got it?
Yeah. Okay, well, that's the end of the experiment, you guys. Hope you're happy.
Arriving on April Fool's Day of 1990, Ha! Began airing as a standalone comedy channel. Backed by the MTV Networks group, the Ha channel did little to catch anyone's attention. Meanwhile, over at the Comedy Channel, things were only getting stranger. Created by Mystery Science Theater 3000 founder and star Joel Hodgson, The Higgins Boys and Gruber was a deranged sketch show that began airing on the Comedy Channel. The improvised dialogue, chain smoking, and a serious slacker attitude was an early indicator of just how surreal the Comedy Channel was willing to get under Art Bell's direction. Even when it was time to cut to a commercial break, the bizarre humor did not let up. With the first credited appearances of the SNL classic Deep Thoughts with Jack Handy, Handy's segments ran alongside standard ads, creating a truly disruptive atmosphere. After just a couple years of mutually low ratings, the Comedy Channel and Ha decided to consolidate their losses and tied the knot in 1991. The joint ownership between MTV and HBO was officially dubbed Comedy Central. Complete with their now iconic logo, the channel took shape as a hybrid of both of its predecessors, but success still remained outside of their grasp. Although the trusty sci-fi satire of Mystery Science Theater 3000 kept the ship running, many of Comedy Central's early shows missed the mark. The Daily Show, originally featuring host Craig Kilborn, arrived to low interest. Meanwhile, Bill Maher's Politically Incorrect had a whirlwind debut that resulted in a vicious takeover by ABC.
Please, don't hit me.
Taking a cue from his time at HBO, Art Bell took a serious interest in stand-up specials from the get-go. His former company was already known as the channel for both burgeoning and superstar comedians, but Comedy Central established itself as a place that put the spotlight on total unknowns. With specials and regular features, comedians from all walks of life got their first taste of exposure through shows like Women Aloud and Out There. It was not until 1997 that an adult-oriented cartoon brought Comedy Central to the masses. South Park came out the gate with a bang. Within a year of South Park's first episode, the channel's viewership exploded. Originally a less popular addition to pricey cable packages, South Park's word-of-mouth spread and subscribers began requesting Comedy Central en masse. And by 1998, the channel was available to over half of the cable consumers in America. Backed by a legitimate national sensation, Comedy Central perhaps realized their wheels-off approach to humor had led them straight to the bank.
Did you hear that, dude? We still get $3,000. Can you guess?
And for a long time, that mindset served them well. Not forgetting their stand-up special roots, Comedy Central Presents became the new hub for comedians. Although The Daily Show had debuted in the earliest days of the channel's history, the sit-down satire fully formed with the emergence of a new host, Jon Stewart, in 1999. Speaking of Stewart's talents in those early days, Art Bell said, "When you saw Jon Stewart talking to the camera, he had a really good combination of smarts and funny and humanity that was really unique, and I knew it would work beautifully." With a pronounced political attitude and biting takedowns of popular topics, Stewart soon gained a reputation as a strangely legitimate source of news. Supported by the eventual spin-off of The Colbert Report and a number of other reality-based shows like Insomniac with Dave Attell, Comedy Central clearly catered to more than just cartoons. The puppet-based prank calls of Crank Yankers, the proto-mock interview stylings of Primetime Glick, and reality show insanity of I'm with Busey, they all are looked back on fondly. In 2003, Comedy Central once again opened their doors to uncompromising sketch comedians. But unlike their newly acquired Saturday Night Live reruns and former UCB troops, Comedy Central's next sketch star operated alone. Chappelle's Show, debuting in early 2003, once again raised the bar for what was possible on television. Dave Chappelle, the show's mastermind and star, was like a one-man band of non-stop laughter throughout the series' 3-season run.
I'm Rick James. This is a celebration.
For literal decades, it seemed as though nothing could stop Comedy Central from dominating the market for televised humor. Even as obscene animation competitors like Adult Swim entered the fray, South Park continued to prevail. And when basic cable sitcoms began ditching their laugh tracks for more surrealist avenues, Comedy Central seemed to always have a more extreme and hilarious answer, like Workaholics and Broad City. Instead of falling back on Chappelle's Show reruns, the channel greenlit sketch comedy classics such as The Sarah Silverman Program and Key and Peele.
Now, last week, Steve used his transformation machine to turn Carl into a car and drive him around the Monaco Grand Prix. Come on! How many times are we going to use this transformation machine?
Even as the company entered the dark ages that befell most cable networks in the dawn of streaming, Comedy Central still managed to give us star-making vehicles and endlessly rewatchable masterpieces like Nathan For You and Detroiters. But much like Bill Maher's quick departure for greener pastures back in the early years, modern Comedy Central stars often went on to bigger things.
That's no accident.
And with a slowly dwindling count of original programs, Comedy Central fans began to wonder if all the resources were being laid on the South Park Golden Goose. Once the forefront of TV comedy, the channel mostly ceased to operate outside of syndicated reruns and a handful of staples. Comedy Central is down to its last remaining relics. Even its stalwart South Park no longer resides purely on Comedy Central. Presented without ads on Comedy Central's parent company streamer Paramount Plus, the channel has become a shell of its former self. Now known for hosting reruns of Tosh.0 and one-time rival The Office, the dissolution of Comedy Central as an outlet for humor has left a massive hole in cable programming. While certainly not the only example of how streaming has harmed the entertainment industry as a whole, do what it says.
Play something.
Comedy Central's quick death is perhaps the most glaring. For those who remember the glory days of Secret Stash or a weekly original premiere, Comedy Central was as good as TV ever got.
I can't fight terrorists. I don't know anything about guns or jets.
That doesn't matter. All that matters, Gary, is what you have here.
Whether they're dominating television animation, directing award-winning Broadway musicals, or breaking world records for swearing,
Why the not?
Eric!
Dude, you just said again.
Trey Parker and Matt Stone are in the business of winning. But at the height of their notoriety and fame, the South Park masterminds got tangled up in a project with far too many strings attached. Because when Parker and Stone decided to make their puppet-based fever dreams a reality, Team America World Police nearly broke them.
Okay, a limousine that can fly. Now I have seen everything.
Really? Have you seen a man eat his own head?
No.
So then you haven't seen everything.
With buckets of crude humor, celeb-skewering edginess, and one of the most infamous love scenes of all time, Team America World Police has been a controversial lightning rod since its debut in 2004. Aside from its edgy antics, this all-practical, no CGI feature is something of a technical marvel. But like many feats of practical wonder, the Team America crew paid a serious price behind the scenes. From ballooning budgets to on-the-fly rewrites, Trey Parker and Matt Stone claimed this production was hell on earth. Before their brief careers as puppeteers, Parker and Stone had mastered another form of art. As animators, voice actors, and directors of South Park, the pair created an empire as off-color comedians, praised by many, scorned by some, and feared by nearly every parent on the planet.
Everybody's in it.
Eric!
I'm sorry, I can't help myself. That movie has warped my fragile little mind.
South Park became one of the highest-rated cable programs ever. With its potty mouth machinations and tight production schedule, Parker and Stone's TV outing seemed proof that they could take on the silver screen. After starring in the critical disappointment Basketball, their debut feature South Park Bigger, Longer, and Uncut was a box office smash, and even broke a Guinness World Record with 399 swear words during its runtime.
Dude, that movie was f***ing sweet. It was. Dude, I want to be just like Terrence and Phillip.
Even though the success of the South Park movie brought unparalleled opportunities to its creators, Trey Parker and Matt Stone were seemingly sick of Hollywood.
That sucks, dude. Dude, I'm telling you, it's jobs. We gotta get jobs. Then we get the khakis. Then we get the chicks.
Many hoped Parker and Stone would retaliate with another romp in the small mountain town, but an anonymous spokesman for the duo claimed a sequel would not surface, saying the first South Park movie was so potent, we are all still recovering from the blow. Parker and Stone found filmic inspiration in the most unlikely of places. Rejuvenated by the shared memory of a bizarre children's show, the newly Oscar-nominated South Park creators turned to puppets. Thunderbirds, a British puppet show that long since faded from public consciousness, With cheesy dialogue and haunting marionettes, this strange relic was too visually upsetting for its intended audience. But after a short-lived run in the 1960s, Thunderbirds remained a campy childhood nightmare for those who experienced it. Also of great interest to the pair were the action-packed creations of Jerry Bruckheimer. Evidently, Stone and Parker were particularly tickled with Bruckheimer's cliche-filled blockbuster Armageddon. The Aerosmith needle drop and sappy romantics were so hilarious to the duo that they originally conceived a word-for-word adaptation with puppets. Warded off by Bruckheimer's studio execs and terrified agents, Parker and Stone pivoted to a new concept. Approaching Paramount with plans for a puppet-driven comedy, the duo banked off the goodwill of their recent South Park theatrical hit. And after a strenuous period of negotiations, Team America World Police received the green light. Known for their quick turnaround on South Park's weekly release cycle, Parker and Stone assumed Team America would be just another cakewalk. The two casually penned a joke-filled script and prepared for a test shoot. Unfortunately, neither director had any experience with puppetry or small-scale direction. As they would soon find out, the difference between rudimentary 2D animation and full-blown marionette work is vast.
You think it would be great, you really do. But as soon as you shoot your first scene and you're like, okay, this one all he's wanting you to do is walk in and look to his right. And the puppet comes in and goes...
But before production even began, Parker and Stone were informed that the film would be released in a mere matter of months. Originally thinking they could film the project in 7 weeks, the directors quickly realized they would have to double that in order to succeed. According to Stone, when we wrote the script, we didn't write it with puppets in mind. We just wrote it like any big action film. A guy jumps his motorcycle over 16 cars and there's a big explosion, and handled the script without any thoughts about how we would actually do it. Parker and Stone also realized there were major problems with the script as a whole, noticing that puppets don't make the best comedians.
We started shooting these scenes with puppets, and we had them do all this stuff, and they would really just kind of mash together, and they couldn't do their lines very well, and they couldn't even really look at each other.
Trey Parker knew he had to make some major adjustments. And since Trey Parker voiced a majority of the characters himself, this put extra strain on him and the crew. According to the lead puppeteer, he's done 3 at a time, all having a conversation with each other. Because Trey was rewriting, there was no time to pre-record, so he did dialogue on the fly while other puppeteers performed. And due to the precise methods used to produce realistic movements and marionettes, this proved incredibly challenging. Although there was a team of about 4 operators per puppet working on cranes from above, Trey Parker himself worked the mechanism that moved each mouth. Stone said, "I don't know why we thought doing a puppet movie would be fun because it was terrible." The on-the-go nature of Team America's writing process shaped the creators in more ways than one, because as America's War on Terror escalated during production, Stone and Parker used real-world events to tell their story.
They're called terrorists, Gary, and they hate everything about you.
Why? What did I do to them? I'm just a Broadway actor.
It's not who you are, Gary, it's what you stand for.
Team America features a contrived, overly patriotic narrative like something out of Steven Seagal's darkest dreams. Stone and Parker let loose the woes and feelings of many Americans at the time. By tackling celebrity culture, political figureheads, and glorified violence, Team America World Police is a messy but effective snapshot of its time. And even though Stone and Parker clearly struggled with the reins of their unwieldy monster, Team America is an exceptionally detailed film. At around 1/3 scale, the puppets and their costumes were made and maintained with precision. Using removable body parts and a series of stock skeletons, faces and characters would be changed to fit any given moment. Unfortunately, even the simple act of a puppet drinking at a bar could take an entire day to shoot. And in terms of cost, even the smallest items, a miniature Uzi for example, might set the budget back by $1,000 or more. That's not to say it was all doom and gloom on set. The crew of Team America was truly one of a kind. Like 2 adult children with the ultimate playroom, Parker and Stone let their imaginations run rampant. With subtle touches like the croissant roads of France and constant size-based gags, Team America is filled with charming Easter eggs. And when Team America was finally unleashed in theaters, critics were mostly kind. Celebrities were enraged, and audiences were, well, sort of confused. Despite taking in an eventually paltry profit, Parker and Stone's picture was mostly seen by kids who snuck in. Though something of a hit in blockbuster rentals and DVD sales, Team America's target audience was simply too young to buy tickets. Although Trey Parker is set to return to film with an upcoming untitled project, the Wonder Duo have stayed away from major motion pictures for nearly 20 years. But that hasn't stopped them from making major waves. In 2011,
2011, Trey Parker and Matt Stone hit Broadway with their musical comedy, The Book of Mormon. Though the play was as raunchy and raucous as ever, Parker and Stone's work received 9 Tony Awards and a coveted Grammy for Best Theater Album. As for a return to the Team America verse, not a chance. Even aside from its disappointing box office returns and overblown budget, Parker and Stone have made it clear they hated the experience. In one enlightening interview, Stone lamented, "It was the worst time of my entire life. I never want to see a puppet again. It ruined all the serious relationships in my life. You just become a different person." Even if we'll never see another Team America, its impact has been reflected in Hollywood for decades, from anachronistic classics like Borat and Tropic Thunder to auteur-based animation anomalies. It's hard to imagine them existing without Team America. And if the recent $37,000 auction for one particular puppet is any indication, the rest of the world hasn't forgotten Team America either.